Can you imagine sitting at the very front of a ship, the bow slicing through black water like a blade, while the wind slaps your face so hard it feels like the ocean itself is testing you? Can you imagine gripping a cold metal railing as salt stings your lips and waves roar beneath you with the anger of 1,000 storms, yet you don't move an inch because moving would mean accepting the truth you're running from? Behind you, your homeland fades into a shrinking necklace of lights. The streets you grew up on, the voices you loved, the warmth you called home, all dissolving into fog as if the world is slowly erasing your past. Can you imagine watching that? Watching everything you ever knew and everything you ever were disappear into the darkness, and knowing you chose it? Knowing that survival demanded this sacrifice, that your dreams had no space left to grow back there, that leaving was the only way to stay alive? Now picture this. You're not alone. That's all. Beside you sits another man. A stranger with tired eyes, a stranger carrying heartbreak in silence, a stranger whose future is tied to yours simply because you both stepped onto this fragile, creaking ship with nothing but hope and fear packed inside your chest. You don't know his story. He doesn't know yours, but the ocean knows both of you, and the night listens gently as two men stare into the darkness, waiting for a sunrise they haven't earned yet, but desperately need. Can you imagine that? Because this is where their journey begins. Aamir had never seen the ocean before today. He had seen it in pictures on TV, in stories told by wealthier cousins who traveled to places he could only imagine. But seeing it now, wild, violent, alive, felt like standing before a giant that decided who lived and who didn't. He shivered and tucked his chin deeper into his thin jacket. His mother would have scolded him for that, for not wearing a second sweater, for not taking better care of himself, for always rushing out the door like the world was waiting for him. He closed his eyes and saw her clearly. A frail woman with gentle eyes and hands worn raw from sewing clothes for families who never once bothered to learn her name. He remembered that final morning. She tugged at the collar of his shirt the way she always did. Abida, you're going too far. How will you live without your home? He swallowed the lump in his throat. How will I live here, Amy? He whispered back. She looked at him, a look filled with heartbreak, fear, and a quiet understanding she wished she didn't have. Then she pulled him into a hug so tight he could feel her ribs, so desperate he wished time would stop. Aamir opened his eyes, back on the ship, back to the wind that whipped across his face, back to the salt that burned his eyes. Tears he refused to admit were his own. The hull groaned as a massive wave slammed against it. Aamir grabbed the railing, knuckles whitening, breath catching in his throat. A first time at sea? A deep voice spoke beside him. Aamir nodded. And you? Rehan didn't answer. Not yet. Not until the ocean forced him to. Aamir glanced at him, the wind tugging at his hair. What do you mean, gone? Rehan didn't look away from the horizon. When I stepped onto the ship, he said quietly, I knew I wasn't just leaving my home. I was leaving my home. I was leaving the person I used to be. Aamir swallowed. He understood more than he wanted to admit. For a moment, neither man spoke. The ocean roared around them, deep, endless, uncaring. Aamir hugged his knees to his chest. Do you think we made a mistake? He asked, his voice barely louder than a whisper. Rehan exhaled slowly, watching the dark waves rise and fall like the breath of some ancient creature. Maybe he said, or maybe this is what courage looks like from the outside. Aamir frowned. A courage? Rehan nodded. People think courage is loud, a big speech, a bold choice. But sometimes he paused, searching for the right words. Sometimes it's just two men sitting on the front of a ship, scared out of their minds, but still moving forward. Aamir let out a shaky laugh. The wind howled again, spraying them both with cold mist. Well, do you think the new country will be better? Aamir asked. Rehan didn't answer immediately. He reached into his pocket, touching the pouch of soil, the last piece of the world he left behind. Now, I don't know, he said finally. But I know. He said finally. But I know we can't go back. So whatever waits for us, we face it together. Aamir stared at him, surprised. Together? Rehan nodded once. For as long as this ship keeps moving. And for the first time that night, Aamir felt a little less alone. Another wave slammed against the hull, sending a shudder through the metal beneath their feet. The ship groaned, old, overworked, carrying more dreams than it was ever built for. Behind them, families huddled together, wrapped in thin blankets that barely protected them from the cold. Children cried softly, too exhausted to be loud. An old man whispered prayers under his breath, a rosary trembling in his fingers. Somewhere in the corner, a woman stared at a torn passport photo, as if memorizing a face she might never see again. Aamir looked back at the scene. "But do you think they're all scared too?" he asked. Rehan followed his gaze. "Of course they are. A person only gets on a ship like this when they've already lost everything that made them feel safe." Aamir rubbed his hands together for warmth. "I thought I was the only one who felt like a coward." Rehan shook his head. "A cowards stay where they're dying. Brave men leave to live." Aamir let the words sink in. The wind grew harsher, pushing their breaths back into their chests. The night sky stretched endlessly above them. No moon, no guiding stars, just darkness. The kind of darkness that made a man feel small. Aamir hugged his arms tighter around himself. "Do you think we'll make it?" he asked. Rehan didn't lie. He didn't look away either. "I don't know," he said. "But if this ship sinks, at least we sank trying." Aamir met his eyes, and for the first time he saw not just a stranger, but a man carrying a world on his shoulders. "Rehan," he said softly. "Yeah?" "If we reach the other side, you think things will finally change?" Rehan's jaw tightened. "Oh, they have to," he whispered. "But because going back is no longer an option." The lights of their homeland flickered in the distance. Tiny, trembling sparks scattered across the coastline. Every minute they grew dimmer, swallowed by mist, swallowed by distance, swallowed by fate. Aamir stared until his eyes burned. "That's it," he murmured. "That's where I learned to walk, where I scraped my knees, where my mother waited at the door every evening." Rehan's voice softened. "You don't forget a place like that." Aamir blinked hard. "I'm not trying to forget. I'm trying to forget. I'm trying to remember long enough, so it stays alive inside me." Rehan nodded slowly. "We carry home with us, even when home didn't carry us." A thick silence settled between them, not uncomfortable but heavy with the kind of sorrow only migrants understood. Another gust of wind cut through the air. A wave crashed, spraying cold water over the bow. Aamir wiped his face and laughed quietly. "Looks like the sea is saying goodbye too." Rehan smirked. "The sea doesn't care. The sea just takes what it wants." Aamir swallowed. "Then why are we trusting it with our lives?" Because," Rehan said, "when everything on land turns against you, the ocean becomes the only road left." Aamir nodded, a small, sad acceptance forming in his eyes. Behind them, the last faint glow of their homeland flickered once more, then disappeared into the darkness. Aamir inhaled sharply, as if the final light had been the last thread tying him to the world he once knew. Rehan placed a hand on the cold railing. "That's it," he said quietly. "A no turning back now," Aamir whispered, barely audible. "Goodbye, goodbye." The sea roared, the ship pushed forward, and two men, strangers still, but no longer alone, faced the endless black horizon, together. Aamir kept his hands over his face long after the light was gone, as if covering his eyes could bring it back. As if hiding the world might stop the pain from spilling out. Rehan didn't rush him, didn't tell him to be strong, didn't pretend things would be easy. He simply stayed. The waves slammed against the ship, each one sounding like a door closing behind them. The cold air pressed against their cheeks, unforgiving, honest. After a long moment, Aamir finally lowered his hands. His eyes were red, his voice barely a breath. "It feels like barely a breath. It feels like a part of me just died." Rehan exhaled slowly. "I know the feeling. The night I left, I kept telling myself I'd come back one day. But as soon as we moved away from the shore, I realized the old me wasn't coming back." Aamir stared at him, searching his face. Rehan paused, the kind of pause that comes from a man who has lived enough to know that truth is not always kind. "It doesn't get easier," he said. "I'll bet you get stronger." The ship lurched. A harsh wave crashed over the bow, soaking their shoes, numbing their toes. Aamir didn't flinch. Rehan didn't move. They sat like two anchors fighting a storm. Aamir looked at the horizon now, a vast, dark emptiness stretching into forever. "What's ahead?" he asked quietly. Rehan tightened his grip on the railing. "A pain, struggle, work that breaks your back, walls you'll have to climb, doors that won't open." Amir's chest rose and fell shakily. "And hope," Rehan added. "Hope that all this someday will be worth it." Aamir nodded, wiping the last of the tears from his face. "I guess this is the price," he whispered. Rehan looked at him, truly looked this time. "No," he said firmly. "This is the beginning." Aamir gripped the railing tighter, letting the cold steel bite into his palms. "The ocean, it's brutal," he said. "But at least you can see it coming. Life surprises you." Rehan nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the raging waves ahead. Exactly. Life has a way of sneaking in and taking everything you thought you knew. It tests you when you least expect it. And sometimes by the time you realize the danger, it's already too late. Too late. Aamir shivered, not just from the wind, but from the truth in Rehan's words. But do you ever get used to it? He asked quietly. The fear, the part where your chest tightens and your stomach drops, and you feel like you're drowning even when you're still breathing? Rehan exhaled, a cloud of mist forming in the frigid air. You learn to ride it, not control it, not fight it. You ride it. You ride it. Every crash, every storm, it teaches you how to survive. And slowly you realize that fear isn't your enemy, it's your compass. Aamir tilted his head, trying to absorb it. Trying to absorb it. Your compass, he repeated. Yes. Rehan said, voice calm, almost gentle. The fear tells you what matters. What you need to protect. What's worth fighting for? And sometimes it tells you when to let go. A silence fell over them, broken only by the relentless roar of the waves. Aamir looked out at the endless black horizon. This is our storm, isn't it? He whispered. Rehan gave a small, grim smile. Well, not just ours. Everyone on this ship, everyone who ever dared to leave behind the only life they've known. It's everyone's storm. The wind tore at their clothes, the cold gnawed at their bones. But somehow, amid the chaos, Aamir felt a strange clarity. The ocean was fierce. Life was fierce. Life was fiercer. And they were still holding on, still moving forward. Aamir stared at him, letting the words sink in. The cold wind whipped against their faces, but somehow it felt less harsh now. A trying, not waiting, Aamir repeated softly. I like that. Rehan nodded. His gaze stayed on the endless horizon. Waiting gets you nothing. Nothing but regret and memories of what might have been. Trying, at least it gives you a chance to change everything. Aamir shivered, though not from the cold. He thought of the home he had left behind, his mother's trembling hands, the streets where he had run and laughed, the smell of dinner wafting through the alleyways. And now all of it was gone, swallowed by the night and the sea. Do you think we'll be okay? He asked, voice barely audible. Rehan's eyes met his, steady and certain. We will. Not because it's easy, but because we don't have a choice. We either move forward or we disappear in the shadows of the past. And I refuse to disappear. Aamir exhaled, a mix of fear and relief. Then together, right? Rehan's small, approving smile broke the tension in the air. Together, he confirmed. For a moment, the two men sat in silence, listening to the ocean. The waves roared and crashed, but now the sound wasn't just a threat, it was a rhythm, a heartbeat, a reminder that life was still moving forward. Aamir shifted, looking out at the dark horizon where the stars sparkled like distant promises. Tomorrow, when the sun rises, everything will feel different, he whispered. Rehan placed a hand on his shoulder. Yes, he said quietly, but the sun doesn't change what we've already decided. It just gives us light to keep going. And together they stared into the endless black, two strangers bound by fear, hope, and the uncertain promise of a new life. Aamir exhaled slowly, letting the tension in his shoulders ease for the first time in hours. Stronger than I know, he whispered almost to himself. I wish someone had told me that before I left. Rehan's eyes softened. Sometimes the people who need to hear it the most hear it last. But that doesn't make it any less true. Aamir looked out at the endless black horizon. The stars reflected on the water, tiny sparks of hope against the vast darkness. He thought of his mother, of the streets he had grown up on, of the life he had left behind. All of it was gone, or at least beyond his reach. And if I fail? He asked quietly, voice tight. Rehan studied him for a long moment, then shook his head. You won't, because even failing while trying is better than living a life chained to fear. You've already survived more than most ever will. Aamir let the words settle, letting them wrap around his heart like a shield. Together, he said finally, his voice firmer, steadier. Rehan smiled, a rare, almost gentle expression on his weathered face. Yes. Aamir leaned slightly closer, feeling the warmth of human presence against the cold wind. He wasn't alone anymore. Not really. For the first time since boarding, the future didn't feel like a void. It felt like a path, uncertain, frightening, but open. And as the ship cut through the waves, carrying them into the unknown, Aamir realized something he hadn't dared admit before. He could survive this. He would survive this. And maybe, just maybe, he would find himself along the way. The sunlight spread slowly across the water, painting the waves gold and silver. The chill of the night still lingered, but it no longer bit as sharply. Aamir stretched his arms, taking a deep breath of the salty, new morning air. For the first time, he imagined what life might be like beyond the horizon. Streets he had never walked, faces he had never seen, opportunities he had only dreamed about. Rehan glanced at him, a rare softness in his eyes, as, "You know," he said quietly, "we've already survived more than most people will in a lifetime. The rest is just learning to live." Aamir smiled, a small, unsteady thing, but genuine. "I think I'm ready to learn," he whispered. The ship creaked beneath their feet as it cut through the waves. The world behind them was gone. The world ahead was unknown. But for the first time, the uncertainty didn't feel paralyzing. Rehan looked out over the horizon, then back at Aamir. "But no matter what happens, remember this. We chose to move forward. And that choice, that courage, it can't be taken from us." Aamir nodded, feeling the truth of the words sink into his bones. "Then let's keep moving," he said, determination threading through his voice. Rehan clapped him on the shoulder again, a simple gesture that carried trust, understanding, and a promise. "Together," he said. Amir's chest swelled with a warmth he hadn't felt in days. Together. Tether. Two men strangers once, now bound by a shared journey, staring at a horizon filled with possibilities. Yet as the sun rose fully, spilling its first golden rays across the restless sea, both men understood something silently without words. The night was over. A new life had begun. And they would face it side by side. The gentle rocking of the ship felt like a heartbeat, steady and reassuring after nights of fear and uncertainty. The salt air no longer stung as sharply. It carried with it the promise of beginnings. Aamir took a deep breath, letting the warmth of the rising sun seep into his bones. He could almost feel the land ahead, a place where work, struggle, hope, and dreams waited for him, a place where he could become more than just a memory of the home he had left behind. Rehan glanced at him, a knowing look in his eyes. "The journey changes you," he said quietly. "Not just the destination, but every wave, every storm, every moment in between. And if you survive it, you carry more than just hope. You carry yourself." Aamir nodded, feeling the weight of those words. For so long, the future had seemed like a shadow, dark and uncertain. But now, with the first light of day touching the water, it felt tangible, reachable, real. They stood in silence for a while, letting the calm morning wrap around them. No words were necessary. The bond forged through shared fear, shared courage, and shared hope was enough. Finally, Aamir spoke, a small smile breaking through the exhaustion. "Well, whatever happens next, we face it together." Rehan clapped him on the shoulder. "Together," he echoed, voice steady and unwavering. And as the ship pushed onward, slicing through the golden waves toward the unknown, both men knew something deep in their hearts. The night had ended. The past was gone. A new life waited. Two men, once strangers, now brothers by choice, moving forward into a horizon full of endless possibilities. The level possibilities. And the ocean, vast, unpredictable, eternal, carried them gently into their future. People say migration is a journey from one country to another, but they're wrong. Migration is a journey from who you were to who you must become. Aamir and Rehan had left behind streets, memories, and loved ones. They had lost a home. But in that loss, they had found something greater. Hope, brotherhood, a chance to start again. The ocean had tested them, the night had tried to break them, and fear had shadowed every step. Yet here they were, two men standing at the bow of a ship, staring at a horizon full of possibility, hearts still beating, courage still alive. And sometimes that is enough. Enough to survive, enough to build, enough to change a life forever. As the sun climbed higher, spilling gold across the endless waves, Aamir and Rehan understood the truth of their journey. It wasn't about the land they were going to. It was about the people they had become along the way. And in that moment, with the wind at their backs and the sea stretching endlessly before them, the future, terrifying, magnificent, uncertain, finally felt theirs to claim.